We're so happy to have you here. This is the 6th webinar of our summer webinar series, and we're excited to have you here today. So for those who don't know, my name is Lee. I'm the manager of Rondo Seminars, and I've been working with Dr. Rondo and Rondo Seminars for the past 21 years. Today with us, we have a very special guest all the way from Italy. We have Gory Cottinini, and he'll be speaking on the Froggymouth and the AMCOP appliances, and we're very, very excited to have him here today. So as this is the 6th webinar, we have one more after this, and our final webinar will be on November 6th. And it will be, the focus will be on airway-focused orthodontist with Dr. Mike Sepernek. So all of those that are registered today will automatically be entered into the next and last one. So tell your friends, have them join us as well. We have plenty of room. So just a little bit about the platform that you're on. So this is Zoom, and feel free to use the chat feature during the webinar for any questions you have. We'll make time at the end to answer those, as many as we can. You can also reach out to me if you need to, if you have any technical issues, and I'll try my best, very best to help. You can also email me, if that's the case, to Lee@Rondo Seminars, and I will try and help you with that as well. Okay, so now just a little bit about Gory. So our speaker today is Gory. Just a moment, hang on, there we go. He is a seasoned expert with over 14 years in the dental industry, and throughout his career, Gory has been deeply focused on understanding real patient needs and addressing the shortcomings still present in the market. He's led the way in introducing new manufacturing and distribution models, has trained countless clinicians in the use of cutting-edge dental solutions, especially in early interceptive orthodontics and functional appliances, IPR techniques, and patient-centered care. Gory lives in Milan but operates globally, managing distribution companies across Europe and North America and consulting with select dental companies on growth and international expansion. He's also a frequent lecturer at global dental congresses where he champions minimally invasive technologies that prioritize patient protection. Today, he'll be sharing insights drawn from real-world clinical experience and global market expertise. So whether you're here to enhance your practice, discover new approaches, or explore emerging technologies, you're in the right place. We're thrilled to have him here with us tonight to share his expertise on the Froggymouth and the AMCOP appliances. Take it away, Gory.
Well, thank you, Lee, and good evening, everyone. As Lee said, I am currently connecting from Italy. I'm in Milan at the moment. And just some piece of information, we are under a thunderstorm at the moment. So I really hope that my internet connection will be stable throughout the whole webinar. So just to start, allow me to thank Rondo Seminars for the kind invitation. And it's always interesting to share some information because, as I always say, I'm not a carrier of any absolute truth. I like to transfer the experience that I have gathered over these 14 years. It all started, there are some interviews of me on the internet as being a concerned parent because several years ago when my daughter came to life, she was born with some minimal health issues that were kind of disturbing for my wife and I because she was struggling. She had issues in breathing, she had issues in tongue posture, and we were concerned parents. And we found out that there is so much still we can learn and so much still that we can do to avoid or to early intercept these kinds of problems. And after that, I decided to start sharing this experience, starting in Italy, of course, and then country by country. We are today in over 28 countries working with these projects. And more than between the two solutions that I'm going to introduce to you this evening, more than 2.4 million patients have been already treated around the world. So you also have a lot of scientific literature, a lot of clinical cases, and a lot of doctors around the world that are eager to share their experiences and to supply you with every piece of information that you might need to understand even better. Of course, I always specify that I am not a doctor. I went through business administration school, and everything I will share with you tonight is part of the experience that I have in working with thousands of doctors around the world, sharing experience with hospitals and university colleges around the world, and of course, with numerous partners, distribution partners, and companies that have been working in the dental field for so many years. So I am trying to put all of this information together to just give you some highlights, some useful pieces of information in order for you to understand if you might be interested in understanding more and having these things available for the well-being of your patients. So thanks again for being here with me this afternoon. And I will start immediately by telling you that, excuse me, here, that we're going to talk about two different appliances. One is called Froggymouth, and the other is called AMCOP Bioactivator. So let me start with Froggymouth. So Froggymouth, before talking about the appliance, I'd like to share this slide. I normally always show this slide during my lectures because it's a very interesting piece of information. This comes out from the American Journal of Orthodontics, dated 1964. And in 1964, the American Journal of Orthodontics was telling us that 40% of 4-year-olds have atypical swallowing and 30% of the adult population. And per se, this is a very interesting piece of information if we think that this is almost 60 years ago. And today, I really wish that these were the percentages of people with atypical swallowing. Unfortunately, today, we have nearly 80% of 4-year-olds with atypical swallowing and over 55 to 65% of the adult population. And of course, you can find now that we have written here, this thing can disrupt orofacial growth in children and cause recurrence of orthodontic treatments. And this, of course, is main interest for the dental world. But if you will be interested enough to dig a little bit deeper, you're going to understand and you're going to find articles published on PubMed that start telling us that atypical swallowing is an issue in the adult population. There are ties with atypical swallowing and ADHD patients. There are ties and links with atypical swallowing and neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson, dementia, or Alzheimer's. And so when we start understanding that maybe this is something that we haven't taken enough care and attention to understand, you probably will start figuring out that it's nice for you to have the opportunity of receiving this piece of information and making a choice if you want to understand more, again, for the benefit of your patients. And before I even start on the appliance again, I would like to share with you, what do we mean by atypical swallowing? So let me go back. What is atypical swallowing specifically? Atypical swallowing is the incapability for a human being to transition from primary to secondary swallowing pattern. What is primary swallowing pattern? Well, primary swallowing pattern is the swallowing pattern that we have when we come. And when we come to life, we have a swallowing pattern that is exactly designed and concepted for what we need in that exact moment of our life. Because when we come to life, we naturally are breastfed from our mothers. So the swallowing pattern is under the control of the facial nerve. The facial nerve uses the orbiculary and the buccinator muscles to create a lip seal. This lip seal we use to stimulate the area around our mother's nipple. Under our mother's nipple, there are some glands that when they get stimulated by our lips, allow the milk to flow out. The tongue in this moment of our life is extremely low inside the mouth and protruded towards the lips and acts like a pump, creating a vacuum effect, allowing the milk to flow inside our throat. So this is the primary swallowing pattern, and we need this swallowing pattern until we are breastfed. But when we start developing and growing, and our parents start feeding us with more consistent food, we have to learn when the deciduous teeth appear, the centrals and the laterals, to start chopping food. And so the tongue has a different function. The tongue has to help us to move this food left and right because we have to learn to chew bilaterally to set up proper mechanical movements in our mouth. And then the chopped food has to be thrown down our throat. So the swallowing pattern is not under the control of the facial nerve anymore. We have to transition in secondary swallowing pattern. The swallowing pattern will be under the control of two different nerves. One is the trigeminal nerve and the other is the hypogloss nerve. And these nerves are directly connected with the posterior part of our tongue, where we have the elevator muscles of our tongue. Remember, our tongue has 17 muscles inside, but one of the most important muscles that we have is called stillogloss muscle. And the stillogloss muscle helps to contract the tongue, bring it up towards the palate, and pulling it back. So the resting position of our tongue in our mouth in secondary swallowing pattern is not low, but it's elevated on the top of our palate. This will also contribute in the developing stage of our life to expand the upper maxillary. And contemporarily, the tip of the tongue will stimulate an area called retroincisive papilla. And this area that is exactly behind our frontal teeth on the palate is directly connected to an area in our brain that is called locus ceruleus. And this locus ceruleus contains the hippocampus. That is an extremely important area in our brain that needs to be constantly stimulated, especially during growth. So when we are not able to transition naturally from primary to secondary swallowing, and as we have seen in 1964, we already had 40% of 4-year-olds that were incapable of transitioning. We have to try and connect our brains and think what happened in the 50s and in the 60s that started creating these problems. And unfortunately, we started seeing that there were different solutions offered to parents to nurture and feed their kids. So, of course, breastfeeding started collapsing. We started with artificial feeding. We started with pacifiers. And we started with very extremely soft baby food. And these things that have been, of course, a huge help to so many families, helping them to raise their kids, also have contributed. Of course, they didn't mean to do this, absolutely. But this has happened, and it has impacted negatively on growth factors in human beings. So today we have to find a solution to allow people to transition from primary to secondary swallowing, not only because it causes relapse in orthodontic treatment, not only because it can disrupt orofacial growth in children, but because it will help our children and the adult population to breathe better, to develop better, and to live happily without having all those problems that today it is so difficult for people to understand, like chronic pain or sleep apnea. They don't understand where this is coming from. And most plausibly, there is a tie with atypical swallowing. So I hope you have understood what we mean when we talk about atypical swallowing. So now we have to understand how atypical swallowing looks like. And if you observe people you will immediately notice that, let's talk about children in the beginning, but you can notice this also in the adult population. You start seeing people with extremely dry lips. You start seeing people that have black eye marks under their eyes. You see people that when they need to swallow, they use the lip seal, and you see an extreme contraction of the orbiculary and the buccinator muscles. And allow me to open a parenthesis. When you are in secondary swallowing pattern, you can swallow with your lips open and you can breathe through your nose with your mouth open. But when you are in primary swallowing pattern, you will need the lip seal to swallow. And this is why you're going to see contraction of all the muscles in this area. You're going to see extremely dry noses. You're going to see a changed posture in these people. Normally, they have extremely low shoulders. They are protruded towards the front because it's like if they're lacking oxygen. They are natural oral breathers. And this is not something positive, especially during growth. So we have understood what atypical swallowing is. We have understood how to detect it. And then I will tell you a couple of tricks that colleagues of yours have taught me over the years, how to detect atypical swallowing in adult patients as well. Also, if they don't show signs of contraction of the muscles. But now we have to understand, what do we have available to help these people transition from primary to secondary swallowing. And so we have three ways of treating atypical swallowing. We have traditional rehabilitation protocols like speech therapy and myofunctional therapy exercises. We have traditional trainers like lingual ramps, lingual cages, lip bumpers, so everything that mechanically is inserted in the mouth of the patient and holds the tongue in a determined position. And then there is Froggymouth. But why did somebody feel the need of creating something different when we already had myofunctional therapy and we had traditional trainers? Well, unfortunately, we have to face that there has been also a behavior involution in the past 40, 50 years. Compliance today, especially for those of you that work with small children, is something that is very difficult to reach. And when you're working with a volunteer act, like myofunctional therapy, or you're working with a mechanical way of treating, you need profound compliance by the patient. Because if you don't perform exercises on a daily basis, it is very difficult to achieve instability over time and to reach desired results. Same thing if you're not wearing appliances that need to be worn most of the day and most of the night. Of course, it's very difficult to achieve in obtaining a result. So Dr. Felous has understood that there was a way to solve compliance issues and to treat atypical swallowing by using something that came to his attention exactly in the year 2000. So what happened in the year 2000? A neurophysiologist from Austria called Eric Kandel, with a K, you can Google him on PubMed and you can read his researches, won the Nobel Prize for Medicine. Eric Kandel was not studying atypical swallowing, of course, but he was studying something even more important. He was studying neuronal regeneration in patients with neuronal degenerative diseases. And he discovered that there is actually a way to create a new form of memory by subcortical stimulation. So Dr. Felous read this article, and remembered that Dr. Felous had been for 30 years the consultant in the most prestigious pediatric hospital in Paris and was the founder of the French Society of Pediatric Orthodontics. So he really had struggled over the years in trying to achieve in helping patients transition from primary to secondary swallowing. So he was really looking for a solution, something that could help thousands of patients that he needed to treat every day. And when he read this research, he immediately understood that most plausibly he could have associated what Dr. Kandel discovered with what he was looking for. And it wasn't easy. It took him more than 12 years to develop Froggymouth. So Froggymouth has been under research by two different universities, one in France and one in the United States. In France, there was the orthodontic department. In the United States, there was a neurology department. And they have worked in trying to create in matter something that was just an idea. And actually, they achieved after 12 years. But in order to make you understand what Froggymouth is and how Froggymouth is able to boost myofunctional therapy and to boost results, I have to also explain to you the difference between cortical memory and subcortical memory. And in order to do this, I'm going to use a picture that for people that actually have lived in North America or for North Americans will be something that will touch your heart, but I'm quite sure that you're going to understand the reason why I show you this. So there are two examples that I can give you. The first thing is that it's fairly easy to understand. If I ask any of you that are connected here this afternoon, if you remember exactly what you were doing August 3rd, 2010 at 4 p.m., I'm quite sure that the majority of you is going to have a hard time remembering exactly what they were doing August 3rd at 4 p.m., 2003. But if I ask the majority of you if you remember where you were when you saw the airplanes crash into the World Trade Center for the first time, I'm quite sure that all of us is going to exactly remember where we were, with whom we were, and what we were doing. And why do we remember this? This is exactly the focus of Dr. Kandel's research that you're going to see in the bottom left corner that won the Nobel Prize for Medicine in the year 2000. He discovered that when we are struck by a strong, impactful emotion, our brain gives input to our body and starts producing proteins. These proteins feed cells that he calls CREB2 and CREB3, and these cells, when they receive proteins, they start developing new synapses, new neuronal patterns. So everything that is surrounding us, an odor, a person, a fact, something that we're looking at, that is around us while this process is in motion, is directly transferred on those synapses and transferred to the subcortical part of our brain. That's where long-term memory sits. So the difference between cortical memory and subcortical memory is that subcortical memory is something that will stay with you for the rest of your life. It's always going to be in your brain because it has been associated with something that has been an impactful emotion to you. So Dr. Felous said, what if I was able to generate a strong emotion on a patient? But contemporarily, I also have to be sure that while this emotion is in process, I am also able to move the position of the tongue and to have this information transferred directly through new synapses directly to the subcortical part of the brain of the patient. And as I told you, it took 12 years, but they actually achieved and they obtained a result. And in order for you to understand even better, allow me to show you the short video. This is a patient, and you can find this video on Froggymouth's YouTube channel. You just have to type in Froggymouth on YouTube and you will find hundreds of videos. But this is particularly important because this is a 2.5-year-old patient with a brain paralysis. And you're going to see the first 20-25 seconds of day one when he has delivered the Froggymouth for the first time. And then you're going to see the same patients 2 weeks later after having worn Froggymouth only 15 minutes a day. So allow me to show you this. This is day one. I think you can see how stressed the patient is. He's definitely not understanding and not liking what's happening to him. But most importantly, he is absolutely unable to swallow. Now, after 2 weeks, the same patient, if you observe here, he has already picked up the new swallowing pattern, and this by wearing the appliance only 15 minutes a day for 2 weeks. This is why it's very important to understand the mechanism of action of Froggymouth, because Froggymouth, what you have just witnessed, is extremely simple. I have explained to you in the introductory part of this webinar that primary swallowing includes the fact that we need a lip seal to swallow, because we are swallowing exactly with the same swallowing pattern that we have when we come to life and we are breastfed. So if we put something that is disturbing our opportunity to keep our lips closed, we are impeding to the patient. He is totally unable to swallow in primary swallowing pattern. But this will generate a huge shock, because imagine you are not able to swallow, and we swallow between 2,200, 2,300 times a day. So this creates an emotional shock, but at the same time, it forces our brain to discover secondary swallowing by itself. It's not you trying to perform a volunteer act, but it's your brain that is looking and creates a defense mechanism to allow you to swallow. And so the brain does something extremely simple. The brain switches the command from the facial nerve to the trigeminal nerve. The trigeminal nerve will work with the hypogloss nerve, and they will both work elevating the posterior part of your tongue and pulling your tongue back. The switch of command from the facial nerve to the trigeminal nerve will be transferred on those synapses that in the meantime will have been generated by the emotional shock. So I hope that this is sufficiently clear for you to understand the mechanism of action of Froggymouth. Of course, you will read Froggymouth's protocol, and you will understand that inside the protocol, Froggymouth has to be worn 15 minutes a day, sitting with your back straight, your head straight, and watching TV. And this is not something that you can decide not to do. It's protocol, so it's mandatory. And it's important to watch a program that you actually like. And why is this important? Well, it's important because when you're looking at something that you like, your limbic system activates. And the limbic system is that area in your brain that allows you to feel pleasure and entertainment. But the brain will associate the pleasure of entertainment not to what you're looking at, but to the switch of command from the facial nerve to the trigeminal nerve. So on a daily basis, your brain will want to go in the same direction that has originated a pleasant feeling. So I hope that this has closed the circle on the mechanism of action of Froggymouth. Allow me to show you a couple of clinical cases. These are treated by Dr. Pietro Manzini, that is the scientific director in Italy for Froggymouth. And all of these cases are only treated with Froggymouth, nothing else. So these are patients that have been treated 8 months, 10 months, 14 months, 16 months, because please remember, we're not talking about a cake recipe. So every patient is different. Of course, we have average timings for success. Let's say that averagely a kid is between 8 to 10 months. and averagely an adult patient is between 10 to 14 months of treatment. But we're also considering that most doctors continue using Froggymouth when they see that the tongue has been reeducated, but functionally that patient is being recentered. So they continue the treatment also after having corrected atypical swallowing, and they kind of use it as if it was a functional orthodontic device in order to bring that patient to that natural stability that will allow them to use brackets, aligners, functional orthodontic elastic appliances, or whatever you prefer. But every treatment that you're going to deliver to that patient is actually going to be stable over time. And so this is very, very important. Allow me to show you one last case that I find particularly interesting. And this case is a case on a 26-year-old woman that had a surgical class 3, and she was completely terrified of surgery. So Dr. Manzini obtained only to remove the 2 lower molars. Then he gave her Froggymouth, asking her to wear it for 5 times a day for 15 minutes. And then from the second month, he delivered clear aligners with class 3 rubber bands. So the patient never went under surgery apart from the 2 molars, did 14 months of Froggymouth and 14 months of clear aligners, and now has a follow-up of 6 years after the treatment end and doesn't wear any retainers. So a perfectly balanced occlusion is the perfect retainer that you want to give and deliver and provide to your patients. So let's continue. Indications for Froggymouth. So then we can go on AMCOP. You can correct lingual posture. You can reeducate swallowing. You can restore nasal breathing. You can guide orofacial growth in children. You can avoid relapse of mechanical treatment in adult patients. And you can stabilize all the results that you have obtained. And you can do all of this by inserting Froggymouth in protocols to treat open bites, narrow palates, deep bites, proclined incisors, mandible protrusion, drooling, atypical swallowing, oral breathing, tongue thrust, difficulty in phonetics, snoring, sleep apnea, and posture. So not only for dentists, but also for myofunctional therapists, it's a fundamental little piece of engineering that will give a huge benefit to your patients, and you're going to love using it because you are going to see so much satisfied patients. In Europe, at the moment, we have around 94% compliance rate in patients. And in North America, we are reaching almost 80% compliance rate in patients. So this is something that is really boosting confidence in patients because they see results, they like wearing it, and especially in children, they can watch TV 15 minutes every time they like, and parents need to be there with them. And they are kings or queens of the remote. So kids really love wearing Froggymouth. So 3 sizes, small, medium, and large. It's not a question of age. It's a question of size of the mouth of the patient. Froggymouth has to be always a little bit smaller than the mouth of the patient at rest. Last thing I'm going to share is a very short video that will show you the mechanism of action of Froggymouth. You wear it between your lips. It changes the tongue posture. You will not be able to breathe through your mouth. It will stimulate breathing through the nose. So this was Froggymouth. Now allow me to introduce you to AMCOP Bioactivator. So Froggymouth is a functional appliance. It's not an orthodontic appliance. It's a functional appliance that helps patient transition from primary to secondary swallowing. AMCOP instead is an orthodontic elastic appliance to treat class 1, class 2, first and second division, and class 3, both functional and skeletal malocclusions in growth patients and in adults. So AMCOP is an acronymous. Of course, the product was conceived in Italy, so the acronymous is in Italian, but I'm quite sure that most of you are going to understand because A stands for armonizzatore. It's a harmonizer. M stands for multifunzionale, multifunctional. And COP is cranial, occlusal, and posture. So AMCOP is an occlusal gymnastic. It helps create a perfect balance between the maxilla, the mandible, the occipitus, and the sphenoides. So it's a complete occlusal gymnastic that will help coordinate your arches and treat functional and skeletal malocclusions. It's a full range of appliances. We start treating at age 2 with the pacifier-shaped appliance. Of course, this is the appliance that brought attention onto us on the market more than 15 years ago when we started this project. And if you are able to convince parents to take those pacifiers out and to substitute them with something that will help coordinate the arches, center the meridian lines, and at the same time work in expansion up to 2.3 millimeters, you're really helping that kid to develop properly. Then we have specific class 1 appliances, specific class 2 first and second division appliances, specific class 3 appliances. Then we have an appliance that is called open, specifically designed to treat open bite type patients. An appliance called Integral Plus, that is an appliance that can be contemporarily worn while wearing fixed brackets. So you will be able to align teeth while you're functionalizing the patient. And this is an incredible appliance. And then for those of you that are interested in treating severely dysfunctional patients, so we're talking about TMJ patients, patients with chronic pain in their articulations, we have a specific line that is called AMCOP DTM, and these are specific to treat dysfunctional patients. So a very quick product description. As I told you, the Bioactivator is designed to treat malocclusions, TMJ disorders, and at the same time correct bad habits such as mouth breathing and support incorrect tongue position. It is an appliance with a built-in mechanism that can accompany skeletal and facial bone development to address malocclusion. And of course, you will understand that these corrections are achieved while wearing the appliance, and the forces that are redelivered are soft elastic forces. So you're not forcing positions, but you're allowing the patient to reach its desired and natural position. Please remember, AMCOP does not work on teeth. So it's not an aligner. It does not work aesthetically. It works functionally. This means that the patient will reach his natural occlusion, and it does not mean that his teeth are going to be aligned. But if you're going to proceed in aligning those teeth, the position will actually be natural, and his occlusion will be the perfect, the perfect retainer. So it can be applied to patients of all ages. Of course, in young patients, treatment time is faster. And as I told you in the introduction, this is not something exactly like Froggymouth that was concepted overnight. It took over 15 years of research, and it's been concepted through the cooperation of orthodontists, dental technicians, osteopaths, posturologists, and speech therapists. Because the company that has concepted this product has really been analyzing everything that was available on the market. And there are so many wonderful appliances, but most of them do only one thing. So in order to have multiple benefits, they wanted to create something that could have all of these benefits in only one appliance. And so after 15 years of research, they have reached the patent and they started this wonderful journey. And what is the difference between AMCOP and any other product on the market? Well, first of all, the material. It's a full elastic thermoactive material. It means that you can actually mold it to fit the oral environment of each patient. So it's the closest thing to a custom appliance without being a custom appliance. And there is a specific training course that will teach you how to modify and how to reach the perfect combination of shape and force to deliver exactly to your patient. You can use it to correct skeletal and facial development problems to address malocclusion. You can treat TMJ disorders. You can restore normal nasal breathing. You can support correction of wrong tongue position, not solve atypical swallowing. So that's why AMCOP and Froggymouth are extremely powerful to be used together. You can treat bruxism and nocturnal snoring. You can achieve better facial development. And of course, you can sustain stability of treatment results. What is the other difference compared to any other product? Well, we work on 4 different shapes of arches. Most appliances around the world have one shape fits all. And this is the first thing that the people that concepted this appliance said, how is it possible that I have only one shape that has to fit every human being? So they have identified 4 macro categories of human beings, and this is the first step of trying to individualize and to create something specific for your patient. Then, and you're going to see it through the next slides, you have 9 different occlusal floors. What are the occlusal floors? The occlusal floors is that part where the teeth will actually be in contact, upper and lower arch, with the appliance. And of course, and I think this is easy for you to understand, if I need to achieve this movement, like restore vertical dimension, or I need to, once I have restored vertical dimension, advance the mandible, most plausibly, thicknesses will have to be positioned in different areas of these appliances. And so the occlusal floors are where the thicknesses are positioned. So in decidual teeth appliances, which we have in pink and blue, for the moment, the 2 original genders, but we have had requests and we're working also on other colors. And with or without the shield, because of course, if the kid is not wearing a pacifier, you don't want to deliver a pacifier shaped appliance. But if he or she is actually wearing a pacifier, it's easier to switch and to have something that reminds of a pacifier in order to speed up the acceptance of this appliance towards the infant. And these have, of course, a flat chewing platform. So these will work perfectly to correct dental arch deviations, correct bad habits, support correction of wrong tongue position, and at the same time work in expansion. Then we have class 1 appliances, and these, each of the 4 types, so the 4 shapes that I have introduced previously, will have 2 models. One model will be called Deep Basic and will be specific for restoring vertical dimension, and the other will be called Integral, that is the appliance that will allow you to work perfectly in transversality. And these are indicated in deciduous, mixed, and permanent dentition. They're excellent to treat minor class 1, class 2, and class 3 malocclusions. You can correct arch deviations, correct TMJ disorders, address bruxism and nocturnal snoring, correct bad habits, support correction of wrong tongue position, and correct the meridian lines while balancing the TMJ. And then we will have the class 2 and the class 3 appliances. These are indicated for deciduous, mixed, and permanent teeth, and these are for severe class 2 and class 3 corrections. So in this case, and we just finished the master course here in Italy, and this year we were so happy because we had 23 doctors coming from United States and Canada to Italy the past week. You really need to have very, very specific training on the device. And of course, the best results are on young patients because you will be able to use these appliances and use the natural biology of the patient. You will learn how to use the growth peaks of your patients to help you speed up and create a direction to the treatment. But I have to tell you that in 15 years of experience, and most doctors that came over to Italy or that have attended our training courses in North America have seen also incredible results on adult patients. Of course, a treatment on an adult patient, it's always a compromise because you maybe reach him after 50 years of malocclusion or after 40 years of malocclusion, but you can definitely achieve in having that patient feel better and maybe eliminating that chronic pain that was caused by not being functionalized and not being stable. And of course, then you can correct deviated midlines, you can support tongue position, and you can improve swallowing and nasal breathing. It is very important to analyze also the clinical cases. In a few moments, and I am almost finished with this very fast and very short webinar, I will show a QR code, and this QR code will allow you to, if you open it with a Google account, it will lead you to a Google Drive, and it's absolutely free of charge. You will be able to download case reports, to download scientific articles, because I want you to read what you actually can achieve in obtaining. So you have case reports on extremely small children. You have case reports on teenagers. You have case reports on patients between their 8 and 10 years of age. And you have case reports on adult patients. And I would really want you to go and read these articles. And if you have any specific questions, of course, you can always write to us, and it will be our pleasure to send your questions to the scientific direction of the project and have the answers delivered to you. Please remember, and I'm almost done with my webinar, that we are coming back to North America. We're going to be in Toronto, November 1st and 2nd with Professor Cardarelli, and we'll be in Chicago, November 3rd and 4th. I think there are still some spots available, so if you are interested, you can learn more about this just by contacting lee@rondoseminars.com. And you will have specific training courses on Froggymouth and AMCOP. Dr. Cardarelli is the scientific director of AMCOP, and I myself will be delivering specific trainings on Froggymouth with the help of several North American doctors that have already taken our courses over the years and that are always eager to pitch in, to come and share their experience, and to be of help to all you that will come and participate. So this is the QR code. You may feel free to scan it, and just by pressing on AMCOP or on Froggymouth, it will lead you to training videos, to marketing materials, to scientific articles, to clinical cases, and everything you might want to learn about Froggymouth and AMCOP. As I have told you, I have reached the end of my webinar. I am now at your availability. So if you have any questions, I am more than glad to answer. I once again would like to thank Rondo Seminars, would like to thank Orthodent for the precious support because, oh, by the way, I see that Bill Van Evans from Orthodent is connected with us. So Bill, if you want to say hi to participants, I kindly invite you to pitch in. Bill is my partner and is the person that has allowed these projects to reach North America and created the opportunity for all of you to get trained and the possibility to use these appliances. So thank you again for your kind attention, and I leave the stage to Bill and to Lee.
Thank you, Gory. That was a great presentation. I'm sure a lot of people learned a lot of new things and are kind of shaking their heads as to, does this really work and is it really that simple? And the short answer to that question is yes. And Gory mentioned we just came back from a master course in Italy, and Filippo Cardarelli presented for 2 days on advanced clinical treatments and in many, many cases showing just the use of the AMCOP device. And a lot of the participants were amazed at the results that he's getting just by using this simple device. And Froggymouth, is a separate device, as Gory mentioned, and really centered on controlling the tongue and breathing. And these are such prevalent issues in our society today with the hormones and additives in the food and the allergies that our people are developing. So these are tremendous appliances to use to help your patients. And by all means, we would encourage you to come and hear what Filippo has to say in the upcoming course in either Toronto and Chicago. And I know Lee is going to talk to you about a special offer that we've put together to help you get started with this treatment in your offices. And it really is a tremendous opportunity. In Orthodont, for years, we've tried to find products that will help patients and practices to increase their success. And I think we've definitely got a couple of home runs here. So thank you, Gory. And I look forward to seeing you again in a month or so. So thank you,
Absolutely.
Lee.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Thank you. That was amazing. I learned a ton again. I always learn so much when I watch these. This is quite amazing. I do have a few questions, though, which, if you have a chance, if you can answer them. So,
Of course, if I'm able.
perfect. So, one question I did receive is like, how many of the AMCOP appliances do you need for treatment?
Well, so there is a reply to this that is extremely specific. What do I mean? Traditionally, you can achieve in solving the problem that your patient has with a single appliance because of the quality of the material in which the appliance is made of. But there's a but. If, let's say, we are dealing with a class 2 hyperdivergent patient that also has a deep bite, it's very difficult to treat the class 2 until we don't restore proper vertical dimension. So in those cases, we will need a phase 1 where we're going to work in restoring vertical dimension. And then after maybe 6 to 8 months in achieving and obtaining the proper height for that mandible and that maxilla, then we can switch to a class 2 appliance and treat the class 2. So in those cases, you will need 2 appliances. But if you're dealing with a class 1 and you just need to recenter the meridian lines, or you need to treat a TMJ patient that is in class 1, you will need only 1 appliance for the full treatment.
Wonderful. That's good to know. Thank you. I do have a few more questions, though. Can you use the Froggymouth with braces and functional appliances at the same time?
Absolutely, yes. Froggymouth, since it needs to be worn only 15 minutes a day, and my suggestion is always in children, once a day is more than sufficient. Adult patients, I always suggest, not me, because as I told you, I'm not a doctor, but most doctors that are using it ask their patients to maybe wear it for 2 or 3 times during the day for 15 minutes. The only functional appliance that is not compatible with Froggymouth is the rapid palatal expander. So if you have already positioned and are already working and expanding that upper maxilla, you don't want to have anything on the palate that will compromise the opportunity for the tongue to reach exactly its proper position on the palate. So if you have already started expansion, finish your expansion and then put the Froggymouth. But if the patient is wearing brackets, or the patient is undergoing a treatment with clear aligners, or is using an AMCOP or any other functional appliance, those that are worn only at night, he can absolutely wear the Froggymouth 15 minutes a day.
All right, perfect. Now I do have one more question. And this is a very good question, actually. So, can you use the AMCOP or the Froggymouth when you have a tongue tie?
Oh, very good question. Well, the answer to this is depends on the tongue tie. And I have learned this because this question has been asked so many times. So you will learn during the training courses that tongue ties need to be analyzed extremely well. And you have labial lingual frenulums and you have lingual frenulums. And those, if we are dealing with extremely short frenulums, it's very difficult for the tongue to reposition itself. Or if we're talking about AMCOP, it's very difficult for the appliance to fit comfortably in the mouth of the patient if there are tongue ties that may impede the proper positioning of the appliance. So case by case has to be documented and analyzed thoroughly before deciding if proceeding with these appliances. And normally, a consultation is always required to analyze and to determine if you need to cut that tongue tie or if you can work in stretching it. This is something that the doctor must understand and proceed.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much. Okay, so I think that if anybody has any more questions, I think that's
There is a
pretty much.
question, when do we have AMCOP in Toronto? It's November 1st and 2nd. You can reach out directly to Lee at rondoseminars.com, and she will supply you all the necessary information.
Absolutely. Yes, we'd be happy to have you there for sure. Okay, well, I think that is fantastic. I learned so much, again, like I said, every time. And I look forward to seeing Bill and Gory in Toronto and Chicago, and hopefully a whole bunch of you as well. So thank you again, and everybody have a very nice evening.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Bye.